Tyler Dunne covers the NFL and does really good, deep journalism. It talks to people and then gets to the bottom of what makes different folks in football tick. And I like his reads, golongtd.com. And he joins us now to discuss a recent piece he did on Kliff Kingsbury here in the nation's capital. Tyler, it's Grant and Danny. Thank you for the time. How are you?
Grant, Danny, what a pleasure to be here, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Well,
you got it, buddy.
Appreciate you. Why don't we start with what piqued your interest? Why, there's a lot of coordinators, a lot of people around the league worth diving into right now. Why Kliffy?
You know what probably grinds my gears as much as anything, right? To quote Peter Griffin here, it's like when perception just kind of overwhelms reality, and a take can kind of get spun within the ecosystem in which we all inhibit, right? And then we just kind of accept it as fact. And I feel like that kind of happened to Kliff Kingsbury, where it starts great, those 2 seasons in Arizona, like 10-2 and 6-0, and everything's hunky-dory, and Kyler Murray looks like an MVP candidate, and then it all kind of falls apart. He inevitably, like all head coaches do, falls on the sword, and we all kind of assume, well, this is a coach with an offense, the defense is figure out, not suited to be a head man, and off to Thailand he goes. He's not taking coordinator interviews, and he pops up at USC, and then he pops up there with the Washington Commanders. And I think when all this was kind of going down, I was just thinking about it this week because it's football in June, and we all kind of read into it too much, and I didn't really want to look at clips on X and write a story on any of those. The Deebo Samuel stuff was insane, by the way. We can talk about that later if you want. I mean, my God. It's just, and he's running versus air. Who cares? I'm just thinking about Kliff, and my mind went back to a conversation I had with somebody who knows him best, Nick Shimonek, a quarterback at Texas Tech. He was Mahomes' back, and he became the starter. And this is way back in 2020 when we talked, and he's just like, man, Kliff is somebody who shows up at 3:30 a.m., gets a workout in, watches film, goes to meeting, watches more films, goes to meeting, and then watches more film. And it's insane what he's digging into. He watched every single play of the prior NFL season. This is when he's at Tech. He's looking back at clips from frickin' Bowling Green, any college you can, any way to get an advantage. And I'm just thinking, man, this is somebody that's a little more old school than anybody thinks. I get it. He's got the good looks, the 2020 COVID draft room with the fireplace outside. All that stuff kind of gets us thinking about him a certain way. He's more of a grinder than anybody knows, and I feel like it really showed last year with Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, Tyler, to that point, and that may be the answer to the question, but what do you think the biggest public misconception is about Kliff Kingsbury? Is it based on that the fireside draft chat, or is it just in general about the guy, the good head of hair, the handsome face, the baritone voice? Like, what's the big misconception out there that you now kind of debunked?
I think the misconception is that his offense, his way of doing things is bound to just blow up in flames, and he doesn't have a counterpunch. I think that because, I mean, look, it was ugly at the end in Arizona. You can't dispute that. But to just put all of the blame on the coach, the one with the X's and O's, I think is generalized. And he had a quarterback in Kyler Murray who's unbelievably talented, does a lot of things nobody else can. But let's be real. I mean, they had to put a homework clause in his contract to get him to watch film. You got a head coach who's watching films all hours of the day, and a quarterback who I guess would rather play video games than put in that extra time. I mean, Jayden Daniels is wired more like Kliff than Kyler Murray is, than even a Caleb Williams is, another quarterback that he's had. I've heard unsavory things about him when it comes to film. And I feel like that's the misconception, is that this guy's got an offense that is going to get figured out, and it just doesn't fly in the NFL. And I think it's the exact opposite. I look at him like a McVay, like a Shanahan, like some of the best offensive minds in the sport who can have that counterpunch. He just has to get with the right quarterback. I feel like that's been the case all along. He did this stuff with Mahomes, who's the best quarterback in the sport. I feel like all along he's been somebody with a deep Rolodex of contacts throughout the league and a deep well of plays to dip into. And I think that now he just has the quarterback to kind of maximize his own football brain. And that probably matters as much as anything in the NFL. That combination of offensive play caller and quarterback. Some teams have it, some teams don't. And if you can kind of marry that up, you'll be competing for Super Bowls year in, year out.
Read Tyler Dunn's piece on Kliff Kingsbury. It's really good. Kliff Kingsbury's magic touch and the separation of reality and perception. It's funny because one of the things I was going to ask you in this conversation, based on something you touched on early in the piece, you've kind of brushed past here, which is it almost feels to me like, having now seen him operate from up close and personal for a year, that some of the stuff we always say helps coaches, like, looking like they're straight out of central casting, being handsome, the well-manicured beard, the fact that he's on the cover of GQ, NFL Coaching Edition or whatever, it kind of backfires on him because there is this perception like he's Hollywood. And you said it. I mean, the fire on a 100-degree day in Arizona on draft day didn't help. But I mean, this dude is at the facility at like 3:56 in the morning. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't know that he's viewed that way.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of central to like the whole point I'm trying to make here is like, we just get thinking about coaches and players a certain way. And then field can kind of like, quote unquote, air quote, to justify it in our brains. And that's kind of what happened to Kliff. I mean, it didn't end well on the field for him, but it's not because he's like this finesse head coach not putting in the time. It's the exact opposite. It is similar in a way to the most extreme example would be like Bill Belichick. Just go back and read some of the stories about him, and it's hilarious. There's an article I found where he was referred to by a writer. It's like, was it a Beavis and Belichick? I mean, this guy was a dunce, adult, described as somebody you just don't want to be around, whether you're a coach or a player. And I had Leroy Horde, he was a Browns running back at that time on my podcast, and he's like, man, before every game, Bill is pointing out a player on the other team and giving us a tendency, a tell, some kind of secret that's going to help us in that game, every single player. And it's the kind of stuff that once he gets to New England, once he gets with Tom Brady, things just take off. And he's the greatest coach of all time with the greatest quarterback of all time. And again, that union was something special. So I don't know. We need to hit the brakes and not rush to conclusions about any coach, any quarterback, anybody in the sport, because that second go around, that second chance, I mean, great things can happen. Look at Dan Quinn. I mean, granted, he did take a team to the Super Bowl. We tend to forget that. But it's kind of nuts that this guy was even on the street at any point. I mean, talking to his assistants and players, he's one of the 5, maybe one of the 3 best head coaches in football for a million different reasons. So, it's okay to hire somebody who, quote unquote, failed somewhere else. That experience can be used for good, and maybe everything you think about that coach was dead wrong.
So, Tyler, and it's a great point. Let me just share this, and I want to get your reaction. So last year, while the season was going on, we talked a lot about the cliff, right? Which is, towards at certain points in seasons in Arizona, Texas Tech, second half of years, whatever, the offense wasn't the same once there was enough tape available. And we were pointing to certain tendencies. For example, Terry McLaurin only lining up in one spot back in the day in Arizona, DeAndre Hopkins in one spot, et cetera. And we're going through this stretch where the offense isn't as good. And I'm sitting there going, someone's got to do something. And then adjustments were made. And that kind of wasn't what you associated over the years with Kingsbury, right? It was like, this is the way we do it. We're just going to run tempo, whatever it is into the ground. And he did make changes. He put McLaurin in motion and kind of changed the way they operated. And the offense business picked right back up again as the second half of the season went on. And so that, to me, was a real telltale sign of growth in Kingsbury. Just your thoughts there.
No, that's exactly the point, and I'm not breaking down the film as closely as you are, but that's kind of everything that, players at Texas Tech said. I talked to them back in 2019 and 2020, brought to life in the pros, that this is somebody who is thinking 2-3 steps ahead. And I guess it's a tough balance because, I mean, you don't want to get to the playoffs and completely change who you are as a team, as an offense. I think that maybe some teams can kind of get trapped into that and think, oh, it's a different kind of football. Everybody has seen our film. We've got to completely change who we are and throw a counterpunch when, well, you got there for a certain reason. And I'm not sure what that fine line is, but they figured something out, at least until they ran into that buzzsaw that is the Philadelphia Eagles, where you've got Jayden Daniels. You've got something that no other team possesses. I mean, God, 0 to 60, point A to point B. There's not a faster, more athletic, more dangerous weapon at the quarterback position in the entire NFL. So it's not like you want him to turn into somebody else. But you do have to have a subtle tweak here and there, and just the way you use it, Terry McLaurin, man, that makes all the sense in the world. And I'm sure with these 5, 6, 7 months they've had over the offseason, they're going to figure something out. They've got a lot of smart people on that coaching staff, by the way. It's such an interesting group. I covered Joe Witt when he was in Green Bay as a cornerbacks coach. And way back then, like 2011, 2012, you could tell he was going to be a coordinator one day. I mean, he's getting just the absolute most out of an undrafted rookie in Sam Shields to a Hall of Famer like Charles Woodson. And you can see how guys feed off his energy. It was only a matter of time before some light bulbs went off on that defensive side of the ball. And I'd be shocked if they didn't keep ascending over on the defense with Joe Witt.
Tyler Dunne is with us on Grant and Danny. I was surprised that Kingsbury didn't take more interviews for head coaching jobs this offseason. He did interview in a couple of places, and it sounds like decided before even New Orleans made a decision. He didn't want that job. He's staying in Washington. How hard is it going to be to keep him moving forward, do you think? And what do you think is his interest in being a coach again?
Man, that is such an excellent question because, why would you just jump at a New Orleans job if you're Kliff Kingsbury, right? Like these jobs open up usually because the situation is just absolute garbage. And I don't know. I wouldn't want to be the head coach of the New Orleans Saints right now. This is a team that's been tricking itself into being a Super Bowl contender in perpetuity, and they've got no plan at quarterback. You didn't even know what was going to happen with Derek Carr. Either way, it's probably not going to be a good outcome when that position was opened up. I was shocked that Kellen Moore took it. Like, he's another one that could just kind of hit pause, wait a year, wait for that perfect opportunity to come up, and your stock's not going anywhere. The Eagles' offense is going to be dynamite again, you would assume. And I feel like that's what Kliff Kingsbury is doing here is there's no rush to just dive into what could be a really bad situation. And, I think he probably has stories to share, right, about ownership. Some way, somehow, as folks there know, bad owners can create bad teams. It's pretty awful with the Arizona Cardinals. It's pretty awful in a lot of different spots. It's pretty damn good with the Washington Commanders right now. They've got a good thing cooking. So I wouldn't be in a rush to leave that team, that head coach, that quarterback, unless it is the absolute perfect destination. Who is that going to be? Every year there's one or two jobs that open up that are like, that's a Super Bowl contender, right? That team that just can't get over the hump. Maybe the owner tries to challenge this team to get better, and you can walk into a situation with a top 10 quarterback, a ready-made roster. I mean, in that case, you take that job. And Ben Johnson's been trying to pick and choose his spot. He's the last guy that was kind of in this pole position. It feels like Kliff Kingsbury will be in that pole position, barring disaster. He'll be able to pick any team he wants next year, and who knows if he wants it, right? Like maybe he wants to just chill as a coordinator for a while and enjoy life.
What did the time in Thailand and then at USC kind of do for him as a coach, respectively, in your mind?
God, I would love to know. I'm planning to get down there to Commanders training camp this summer and hopefully talk to Kliff Kingsbury about that all. Because just like you, I'm fascinated to know, like, what is going through your mind when, right, you're kind of made the scapegoat, you get let go, and you just buy that one-way ticket to Thailand, you get the hell out of town, and you tell teams, I'm not taking any calls this year. In some form or fashion, I have to think that reset was just good for his mind, body, and soul to get the hell out of the pressure cooker and take a step back. And, at USC, he's around Caleb Williams, and there's a lot of good there, and you could probably have some fun devising some schemes and some plays, but I don't know. I mean, I don't see Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels like on the same planet at this point. And I think he knew what he was getting into there with Washington versus, getting in there with Chicago with Caleb Williams.
In addition to some of the pieces you're right about folks like Kingsbury around the NFL, Tyler, I know you spend so much of your time covering the Buffalo Bills. Is Buffalo in the same kind of class right now as Baltimore, where in the AFC, the Chiefs have had the stranglehold, but these teams that have been kicking at the door, just kind of hanging around, at some point they're trying to break through, going with the bite at the apple philosophy, so to speak. Is there a reason this year could be different for the Bills, for the Ravens, for anybody else like the Bengals to try to break through?
It was a really fascinating offseason for the Bills because when they lost again to the Chiefs to Mahomes. Again, I mean, the numbers are gory when you really look at the Bills' performance. 3 playoff losses, or the 4 to the Chiefs with the 1 to Burrow. It's unbelievable. I think there's like 49 kneel-down drives, and they've allowed 22 touchdowns, 9 field goals created, 1 or 2 turnovers. It's awful. So there's part of me that's thinking, okay, is Brandon Beane going to look at this and say, good Lord, we can't stop anybody. Let's just add more weapons. Let's just draft weapons. Let's try to win 45-38. And he didn't do that at all, really. I mean, they went into the draft and drafted, defensive players with their first 5 picks, starting with Maxwell Harrison, trying to get a smaller corner who can maybe stick with those Chiefs receivers on those crossers, and they load up on the D-line, TJ Sanders in the second, Joey Bosa, Larry Ogunjobi, Michael Hoyt in free agency, and I sat down with Beane to talk about this in a one-on-one if people want to check it out, and he kind of convinced me. I mean, it makes sense. You have to at least try, right? You have to at least give Sean McDermott and his defensive staff a ton of new toys to play with, something different that time of the year, because the offense is not the reason they're losing these playoff games. At some point, the offense has to not be perfect and still win a game in the playoffs because the defense is in a total calamity. So I think they've got so many new pieces on that side of the ball, and it can't get any worse against Mahomes in the playoffs, that maybe this is year you get a different outcome if you're the Buffalo Bills.
Tyler, great with us, man. It's a great piece on Kingsbury. I really appreciate the time, dude. Have a great weekend.
Hey, you guys as well. Thanks so much for having me on.
You got it. Tyler Dunne on Grant and Danny. Go read the piece on Kliff Kingsbury. It was outstanding. Really well done by him. And he's right. I mean, we had our reservations. I go back to the hiring and my concerns and nervousness about him. Now, the next concern is he was so good that you lose him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of swung the other direction. And what a difference a year makes for him. You know, he almost went to the Raiders. People forget, but he was agreeing to be the Raiders offensive coordinator. That falls through and he comes to DC, however that played out. Thank God for him. I mean, that coaching staff with the Raiders has been fired. They've got a new coaching staff there. He'd be basically in his 3rd organization in as many seasons in the league. What a disaster. Yeah. Instead, you hit the lottery. You come here, Jayden Daniels is the real deal, and you're on the fast track to being a head coach.
Yeah, keeping the whole offensive staff intact pretty much. Just unheard of when you win 12 games.